how long does it take to learn English or to learn whatever language? This is a question that I've heard, I don't know how many times in my life, but I've heard it many, many, many times as a teacher, of course, because for many years I taught English and students would constantly ask this question: how long will it take me to learn English, to become fluent, to become advanced, etc.? And this is, in some ways, a legitimate question, of course, right? People want to know how long it will take to accomplish a certain goal. That's a normal way to think about accomplishing goals, right? However, there is a side to this question that is not so healthy, okay? And that's why in the title I put in parentheses, don't ask this. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever ask a question like this. I'm not saying that. I want to talk about how to have the right mindset when it comes to learning a language and thinking about the whole journey of learning that language. And I'll tell you why this particular question can be a little bit complicated. It can even have a little bit of a negative side to it, I should say. And really, it's an unanswerable question, okay? There is no answer to this question. So let's jump into this. I've got a lot of notes here, so I'll probably look down every once in a while to see what I've written. You guys tend to like this format. I'm a little disorganized. I'm just talking as the words come to me, and I'm having to focus on actually filming it in video format, so it's not just me talking to the microphone. So it's a little more complicated for me, but you've all told me that you love this format, so for now I'm going to continue on with it, but it's a little disorganized and I'm going to have to read some notes, so I hope you don't mind. So, like I said, this is a question that is natural to ask, right? I probably asked this when I was younger, before I had ever learned a language, and in some cases, this is a legitimate question, a good question to ask. And if you've asked this question, that's okay, right? You probably had good intentions when you asked your teacher this question, or you asked me this question. You probably have good intentions. But let me tell you why there can be some... I don't know how to put it, but this question can also imply some negative things. This is the main negative thing that it implies. It implies that language learning is a chore or a task that you finish and then you're done. All right, it took me a year. I've learned English. Mission accomplished. I'm done. Right? Or even if you don't view it as a chore, like something that you just have to get through, even if you view it as a goal for yourself, a personal goal, even then, it's still not the best question to ask when you think about it. Like, okay, here's my goal. I want to learn English, so how long will that take? Okay, I want to learn that in 2 years. Okay, in 2 years, I'll learn English, then I'll be done. So what's the problem with that? Well, number one, you kind of view it as like something you need to finish. Okay, I'm done learning English, right? It'll take me 1 year. It'll take me 2 years to learn English, and then I've learned English, I'm done. And that's simply not the case when it comes to language learning. I don't know if you've learned another language besides English before, but let me tell you that learning a language is a lifelong journey, okay? You will probably continue learning English your whole life if you have the goal to improve your English. If you don't have that goal, then maybe you'll stop tomorrow. I don't know. But if you constantly want to learn and improve your English, you can probably continue learning until the day that you die. Because learning a language is not something that you accomplish in a year or 2 years and then you're done, okay? Because even if you've reached a high level in that language, let's say you become fluent in that language, you can have conversations easily with someone in English, you can talk to people, make friends, whatever, and then you say, okay, I'm fluent. I did that. It took me 2 years. Check. And then after that, you don't continue on learning, improving, practicing your English, and you do other things, or you learn another language. Let's say you decide to learn Greek after that, and then you start studying Greek. Well, what's going to happen to your English, or whatever that language is that you learned first? It's going to get rusty, okay? When you don't learn a language, it goes down, all right? Even a language that you've reached a pretty decent level in, okay? Even if you've become fluent in a language, if you don't use it on a regular basis, it tends to go down. Maybe just a little bit. It probably won't go like this if you've reached a pretty high level, but it'll kind of go like that, right? I remember talking to a student, this was many years ago. She was a Hungarian lady who lived in Germany, and she had lived in Germany for more years than she lived in Hungary. She, I think, spent like 18, 20 years or something, her childhood and her adolescence in Hungary. Her native language was Hungarian. And then she moved to Germany. I think she was married to a German man. They had a kid together. And at the time, she was like 50 years old. So she had spent more years in Germany from the time she was like 20 until she was 50. She spent more years in Germany than in Hungary. And you know what she would tell me sometimes? She would say, oh, I feel like I'm losing my Hungarian. So her native language, the language she, grew up speaking, she was actually losing it. And she felt like she couldn't speak well in Hungarian anymore. She wasn't just saying it took her longer to think of a word or two. No, she actually felt the decline of her native language. Okay? Why is that? Because she spoke German like every day of her life, all day with everyone, and didn't use Hungarian. So even though that was her native language, she was actually forgetting it. I know for a lot of you that sounds crazy, but that's what happens. So let me bring us back to our conversation here. If we think of a language as, okay, it takes 2 years to learn English, well, okay, maybe it will take you 2 years to reach a B2 level in English, but then you got to keep speaking it your whole life. Because if you don't, that'll start to go down. And if you just completely stop with English and don't even look at it for 10 years, well, when you come back to it, it's probably not going to be at that B2 level anymore, or it's going to be noticeably worse. So it's kind of wrong to think of learning a language as just, going from this point to this point, because afterwards you have to maintain that language, right? I learned Spanish many years ago, and guess what? I have to maintain my Spanish practically every day. Actually, yes, every day, because my wife speaks to me in Spanish, only in Spanish. If I didn't have that daily practice, then eventually I would reach the point where I would lose my Spanish. It would go down. I wouldn't forget it completely and go back to a basic beginner level. I'm not saying that, but my level would decrease. Okay? So I think you get my point. There is no such thing as just spending 2 years learning a language, you're done, move on to the next one. You can do that, but that language that you learned is going to get rusty. It's going to deteriorate. Okay? I'm sure most of you know that. And maybe up to this point, you're thinking, Connor, this is obvious. This doesn't negate the question. Okay, how long does it take to reach that B2 level? I'm not talking about the maintenance afterwards. I just want to know how long it takes to reach this level. And then who cares about what's after that? Well, that's a problematic question too. And what I just talked about was just one little thing. The big thing about why this is not an answerable question is that, number one, if you want to know how long it will take you, well, first I would ask you, how many days of the week are you studying English? And you say, every day, 7 days a week. Well, okay. How many hours are you spending every day studying English? I don't know. Maybe sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes only 10 minutes. It's probably hard for a lot of you to answer that question. Okay, let's say you study 1 hour a day. What do you do with that hour? Do you listen? Do you read? Do you speak? Do you write? Do you practice your pronunciation? What do you do? Okay, you can break it down and see what you do with your time. And you might think, okay, well, we can look at it that way, and you can tell me how long it will take if I do 15 minutes of reading, 15 of listening, 15 of speaking, 15 of writing, and then I do 15 pronunciation and 15 vocabulary revision. An hour and a half every day, 7 days a week. How long will it take me to reach a B2 level in English? That's still completely unanswerable because, for example, how concentrated are you? Are you concentrated 100% on what you're doing? Are you doing it actively or are you doing it passively? Are you doing it in the background while you're washing the dishes? Are you literally sitting down in front of your computer and doing it there at the computer and that's your only focus? How motivated are you? What is your motivation? Are you doing it because you're married to an English speaker? Are you doing it because you want a job in the US? Are you doing it because you're just fascinated by American culture or British culture or whatever culture? How motivated are you? How necessary is it for you to learn? This is a great question to ask yourself. If you didn't learn English, what would be the thing missing in your life? How would that affect you if you didn't learn English? You might say, well, it wouldn't affect my life a lot. I just do it for fun. Or you might say, if I don't learn English, my life will be a disaster. I need it for these really, really important things in my life, right? Those two cases are extremely different, right? So everything I just said there is all part of this question. How long does it take to learn English? Well, I can't answer that because it depends on how many hours you spend every day, how frequently you do it. Doing 7 hours a week, but divided among 2 days is not the same as doing 1 hour every day for 7 days. So how long, how frequent, what are you doing with your time? What type of exercises, what type of content are you listening to? How concentrated are you? How motivated are you? How necessary is it for you? If you didn't have this, what would be the consequence? All of these need to be taken into consideration, okay? You might not believe me, but trust me, I've done this. I've studied multiple languages, not to a high level. I'm not saying that, but I've had a lot of experience, and I've been able to compare different periods of language study that I've had. And I can see that sometimes I'll spend, let's say, 3 months learning a language, and then maybe another time I'll spend 3 months learning another language. And in that first language, I reached a level where I could start to have conversations very efficiently with other people. And then in that second language, I couldn't do that. Well, why is that? Because it's not just about the length of time, right? All of these other factors play a role in that. For example, right now I'm learning French, okay? And I'll admit to you that in this exact moment, not this moment, but during this period, these last few weeks or so, I've had less motivation than I did, let's say, a month and a half ago, okay? I'm still learning French. I'm still doing my daily practice. I'm still listening and reviewing and speaking, all of this. However, my progress has slowed down compared to my progress a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, whatever. I'm still doing my French. So what's the difference? Well, my motivation has changed. I feel differently about my need for French. I'm planning on rediscovering that motivation and that need very soon. I'm going to do it. But in the last few weeks, I've been focused on other stuff. I haven't felt that French was that necessary in my life. But before, I felt like it was more necessary. I felt like if I didn't learn it, there would be major negative consequences. Now, I don't feel that as much, but I'm trying to get back to that point where I feel that. So, as you can see, even though I'm doing my French right now, I'm actually not progressing very well compared to how I was when I had more motivation. So, time is really not like the only factor here, like how much time. No, I think of my Italian challenge where I learned Italian for 100 days, right? And I started the first 50 days really motivated. And then the other 50 days, I wasn't motivated. And I did the same amount of Italian every single day. I did not, or basically, right? I did 100 days worth of Italian, and each of those days was a certain amount of time, more or less. And even though I spent the same amount of time, basically every day, those last 50 days were way worse than the first 50 days because of my motivation and my concentration. So as you can see, time is not the answer to this question. I can't say how long it will take you because I'm not you. I don't know your motivation. I don't know your concentration. I don't know how effectively you're using your resources. These are all questions that if you don't ask, or if you don't have the answer to, I should say, you can't answer this this question, how long does it take to learn English or another language? And even if I did have the answer to all that, even if I interviewed you and you told me everything that I just asked, you told me all the stuff you do, when you do it, how much time you spend, what your motivation level is, what your needs are, your concentration level, all of that, I still wouldn't be able to tell you how long it takes to learn English. And that's also because very, very, very few of us have actually done this, where we've started a language from scratch or whatever, and then we track our progress and everything that we're doing every single day, how many hours we're spending, and then we're learning the language, and then when we reach a B2 level or whatever, then we look back and we look at all the numbers, add them together, see how many hours we spent. How many people do you think have actually done that with their language learning? I would say very, very, very few people, right? Maybe, for example, you say, I'm going to start to do that right now. I'm going to start to track how many hours I'm learning English for. And then when I reach a B2 level, a C1 level, then I'll go back and see. Well, you already speak some English now. So you're not really starting from zero. So you have to say, well, I was starting with knowledge of English, and I don't know how long it took me to reach this level, so I can't really say how long it would take me from scratch to learn a language. So maybe at best, you could say, all right, this is how long it took me to go from my level in 2024 to a B2 level. This is how long it took. Maybe, and you can do that personally, but even then, that answer that you have still can't apply 100% to other people. Because, for example, maybe you've already learned another language. Maybe you've already learned German, for example. And so you're learning English now, but you've already learned German. Guess what? You're going to have an advantage over someone who is from your country who didn't learn German, who didn't learn any other language, and is only learning English right now. You're coming at English with from a different angle. You already have language learner's glasses on. You already know what it's like to learn a language. So that's not the same as someone who hasn't learned a language. So these personal differences also play a role, right? Just your type of personality can play a role. Are you someone who is just an extremely good student, who's focused, who's really good at just sitting down, studying, learning things, memorizing things? Or are you someone who isn't like that, right? Those personality differences can also affect how long it takes you to learn a language. Your mood, just, are you going through a rough time right now? Are you going through a hard period? Well, chances are that's going to affect your language learning, right? All of these things play a role in how long it takes to learn a language. And so, I think it's clear from everything that I've just said right now that if you ask someone this question, if you have an English teacher and you ask them, how long is it going to take me to reach blah, blah, blah level? Your English teacher will probably try to give you an answer because it doesn't sound nice to say, hey, I can't answer that question. That's an unanswerable question. No English teacher wants to say that to their students because it sounds mean, it discourages them, it doesn't let them think about the clear path to fluency. It sounds like the English teacher just doesn't know. English teachers don't want to say that to you, and I understand because I've been in that position. But if you were my student and you asked me that, and if I wanted to be completely honest with you, I would say, I can't answer your question. That is an unanswerable question. I'm sorry. I can't even give you an estimation because sometimes the student will say, no, I know that everyone's different. It's hard to say exactly, but just estimate it. I can't even estimate it. That's still not something I can do. So if you have an English teacher or someone that you're practicing with, I would say that this question of how long do you think it will take me to learn English is maybe not the healthiest question because they might just give you some random answer. 6 months. And then you say, okay, 6 months. And then 6 months goes by and you go, I'm still at a B1 level. I thought 6 months would be enough to reach a high B2 level, I guess I failed. Because you were given that reference of 6 months and then you didn't do it, and now you feel bad. Now you're discouraged. Now you decide to quit or whatever because of someone giving you a random number. Okay, so this is something that I firmly believe. I know that there is, what is that? That organization. It's a government organization in the U.S., I think, where they train diplomats to go out into other countries, but they have to learn these languages. And so they put the number of hours that it takes on average for them to learn a language in a classroom setting. But even those numbers, for me, aren't very clear. You don't know exactly what they're doing. You don't know exactly how that classroom experience is and really what level they're at when they ended, because if they say they're proficient, well, that's not very specific. That could mean a number of different levels. So there are references like that you can find where like the US government says how long it takes an English learner to learn these different languages. And yeah, there's some good to that because you can see that, for example, it usually takes an English learner a lot longer to learn Russian than it does to learn Spanish. And yeah, that's true, right? But the exact numbers, I think, can be misleading because they make you think that if you study for that exact amount of time, that you're going to reach this level, but you just have a different case. You're a different person. You have different motivation. These were people who were going out as diplomats for the U.S. government. That's a completely different motivation from someone who's learning English because they want to travel to New York next year, right? These factors matter. So I guess overall, in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to make you feel bad about asking this question, okay? It's a legitimate question in many respects. However, I think it's probably more appropriate to maybe not ask someone just this general question and hope for an answer that's going to give you like a path to fluency like that. It's very theoretical. Almost no one does this where they actually track how long it takes to do all these things. So really, we don't have all of this evidence. Like I said, maybe just that US government chart or whatever. But don't worry so much about that, I guess. Instead of worrying so much about the time, yes, if you have deadlines, then set time-specific goals. Say, okay, next year I have to travel to New York. So by that time, my goal is to be able to speak in a conversation with a native speaker without much difficulty. That's a healthy goal, right? It's something you can set for yourself and you can implement the best strategy to reach that level. But it might not be the best thing to just ask this general question, how long does it take to learn English? How long will it take me to learn English? Think of it differently, okay? And if you don't have these time-sensitive goals, these deadlines, I should say, then try to enjoy the process and try not to just see the finish line over there. Like, okay, in 2 years, I'll be done. No, because you're never done. And even if you were done at that point, you want to enjoy this journey. You don't want to feel like it's just trying to reach that mark where, bam, fluent, done, right? Enjoy the process now. If you don't focus as much on that time, you'll probably learn more now because you'll be less stressed. You won't be looking at that time. Okay, 2 years. He told me 2 years. Okay, you're just enjoying your learning right now. No stress. You're just learning in I don't know, a healthier context maybe. So that's my opinion. You might disagree with me, but that's okay. Here in these videos, I give a lot of my opinions, and I know many teachers disagree with me about these different things. I'm just speaking from my experience here. So don't be offended if I, contradicted what you believe or whatever. I'm not saying I'm completely right. This is just my idea about this. And I was talking to my French tutor about this. That's how I got the idea for this video. And she and I came to this same conclusion, right? And she always felt uncomfortable when students would ask her, how long will it take me to learn French? Because she couldn't answer that, right? So this was a little disorganized and chaotic, but I'm sure it was good practice for your listening. And as always, remember that you can use my advanced podcast episodes, and I give you the transcript for all of those episodes. The link is down below. And you also have my US Conversations podcast available if you want that, in which I talk to other native speakers from around the US at normal speed, and I provide the transcript for you. Okay? So those are great resources to help you reach the next level with your English listening. And so the links are down below. All right? Thank you for watching this video, and I'll talk to you in the next one.